You find yourself deep in the heart of the desert. The sand stretches in every direction, a burning sea of gold under the merciless sun. You slowly realize you've drifted from your path. The watering hole you expected is nowhere to be seen. Night is soon approaching and a thick desert fog is forming. Before you know it, you might find yourself forever lost in the vast desert. Time is of the essence. You pull out an ancient astrolabe, a gleaming brass instrument of circles and stars. With trembling hands, you measure the angle of the North Star above the horizon. You check the coordinates on a worn map, adjust your course, and it works. With the early morning light, you see it, just above the horizon, the watering hole you've been trying to reach. You're saved. And who do you owe your survival to? An extraordinary mathematician from the distant lands of Uzbekistan. Sit back, relax, and let me tell you the story of Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. Al-Khwarizmi was born in 780 AD in a distant region named Khorasan, an area in what is now modern-day Uzbekistan. At this time, the Abbasid Caliphate dominated much of the Islamic world. Having overthrown the Umayyad dynasty in 750 AD, the Abbasids established their new capital of Baghdad just a few decades before Al-Khwarizmi would be born. The city of Baghdad quickly grew into a vibrant political, cultural, and intellectual center, the very heart of the Abbasid Empire. While Europe at this time was struggling through the early fractured centuries of the Middle Ages, often referred to as the Dark Ages, the Islamic world was flourishing. Advancements in science, mathematics, medicine, astronomy, philosophy, and art echoed across the cities of the Caliphate. The Abbasid rule, which would go on to last for over 500 years, is remembered as the Islamic Golden Age, a period driven by the deep belief that knowledge itself was a form of power. The caliphs of this era, particularly Harun al-Rashid and his son al-Ma'mun, actively promoted the gathering of knowledge from across the known world: Greek, Persian, Indian, Chinese, and beyond. After the Battle of Talas against the Chinese Tang dynasty in 751 AD, one small but world-changing treasure came into Arab hands, which would fuel this era: the secret of papermaking. And just for reference, this happened about 600 years before Europe would produce its first Gutenberg Bible. No longer limited by the expensive methods of parchment and papyrus, scholars could now copy, share, and preserve books at an unprecedented level. Today we might hesitate before we do an extra copy at work, mindful of the environment and of course of climate change. But at this moment in time, paper was an invention that was driving human progress forwards, and one we rarely stop to credit these days. Under Caliph al-Ma'mun's vision in the early 9th century, Baghdad would establish the legendary Bayt al-Hikma, or in English, the House of Wisdom, a great center for translation, study, and original research. If Baghdad is to be regarded as the beating heart of the Islamic Golden Age, then the House of Wisdom was most definitely its brain. And it was here that Al-Khwarizmi would create his works that would go on to change the world. But before we dig deeper into his contributions during his time there, we have to understand what the House of Wisdom was all about. Allow me to explain. The House of Wisdom was made to be a vibrant center of learning where scholars from different cultures and religions gathered to study, translate, and expand human knowledge. Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, and Persian astronomy all were brought together under one roof. The Caliphate sought to gather books of knowledge from all around the world, so that scholars in the House of Wisdom could translate these ancient texts into Arabic. After translating, they refined, debated, and sometimes challenged what had previously been accepted for centuries, adding their own insights and discoveries. It was a place where scholars of different disciplines worked side by side, driven by the belief that understanding the world was one of their highest pursuits. They saw knowledge as a way to bring people together and make sense of the world around them. The House of Wisdom would flourish for several centuries until it was ultimately destroyed in 1258 when the Mongols, led by Hulagu Khan, sacked the city of Baghdad. In their invasion, they burned libraries, destroyed scientific institutions, and killed countless scholars. It is even said that the Tigris River ran black with ink from the books thrown into its waters. With that conquest, the Islamic Golden Age came to a tragic end. Now, let's get back to Al-Khwarizmi. Although details of his early life and family background remain uncertain, it is likely that he received an education in mathematics, science, and astronomy while growing up in Baghdad. At one point, he began working at the House of Wisdom. There, among the leading scholars of his time, he quickly rose to prominence. He became renowned for his clarity of explanation and his unique ability to synthesize ideas from different cultures into coherent, logical systems of thought. Because not only did Al-Khwarizmi preserve and explain the discoveries made before him, he built upon them, refined them, and envisioned new ways on how they could shape the future. In a city designed to be a beacon of learning, he would soon become one of its brightest stars. At the House of Wisdom, Al-Khwarizmi found himself at the crossroads of ancient knowledge and future discovery. He began his work like other scholars of the house by carefully translating previous works, checking them against present-day facts, and finding ways to expand upon them. His earliest contributions focused on astronomy and geography, two fields that at the time were not just vital for curiosity, but for survival. From travelers crossing the harsh deserts of the Caliphate to merchants navigating endless trade routes and sailors steering by the stars, all dependent upon precise calculations, accurate maps, and reliable ways to measure distance and time. Al-Khwarizmi spent years improving earlier star charts, making them more accurate for predicting how the stars and planets moved across the sky. His work in geography was just as impressive. He corrected major mistakes in ancient maps, like those made by Ptolemy, developed better ways to measure the size and shape of the world, and carefully recorded the locations of hundreds of cities, rivers, mountains, and other landmarks. These efforts were brought together in his book Kitab Surat, al-Ard, or The Image of the Earth, a groundbreaking text that reshaped how people understood the physical world around them. Even though Al-Khwarizmi contributed to several fields of study, it was within the realm of pure mathematics where he would make his most groundbreaking contributions. In an age when calculations were cumbersome and often specific to particular and unique problems, he envisioned something greater. A universal method for solving equations applicable to a wide variety of real-world challenges. Around 820 AD, he completed what is considered one of his most important works, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, or in English, the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing. From the title of the book itself, a new word would enter human language. Al-Jabr, algebra. Before Al-Khwarizmi, mathematics was like a toolbox with hundreds of rules of thumb. If you had a problem like calculating how much land you could buy or how to divide an inheritance, you needed to find out the specific solution to that problem that someone had figured out before you. There was no general solution, no roadmap, just fragmented knowledge with no broader mathematical structure holding it together. In Al-Khwarizmi's compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing, he sought to change that. For the first time in human history, he created a system for systematic and logical approach to solving linear and quadratic equations. It was more than a manual, it was more like a new language for thinking, one that could describe unknowns, model relationships, and make predictions. Algebra, as he framed it, would become a bridge between pure mathematics and real-world problems. Common problems like how to divide inheritances fairly, how to measure land, how to construct buildings with precise dimensions, or how to solve unknown variables when only partial information was known. With his book, he created a method, a clear step-by-step process for solving equations of any kind, no matter the specific numbers involved. And if you are anything like me and mathematics might seem a bit abstract at times, try to think of it like this. Before Al-Khwarizmi, math was like memorizing 100 different recipes, but not actually understanding how to cook. After Al-Khwarizmi, it was like learning the principles of baking, so you could create any recipe you wanted. He formalized procedures, moving unknowns to one side, balancing equations, reducing problems to known, repeatable steps. He shifted mathematics from a set of tricks to a logical science. This made it possible for future mathematicians, engineers, and scientists to build complex systems, from the architecture of great cities to the hidden codes that run computers today. Al-Khwarizmi's compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing became the standard reference on algebra for centuries, and Latin translations of the book were studied in European universities well into the Renaissance. Al-Khwarizmi's influence did, however, not stop with equations. As his name was translated into Latin, Al-Khwarizmi became algoritmi and eventually entered the European vocabulary, algorithm. Algorithms are those pesky little things that tells Netflix and other streaming services which shows you'll probably love next. They also make our global positioning systems operate and help keep the financial system alive. And they're probably the reason why we are together right now. But what exactly is an algorithm? Let's go back to the beginning, where you are a medieval merchant preparing your trade caravan across the desert. Before setting out, you must follow a precise set of steps. Hire camels, pack goods in a particular order, plan water stops based on distance and heat, and choose the safest route through hostile lands. Each decision, what to pack first, when to rest, how to navigate, all these steps follow a clear sequence. That's an algorithm, a step-by-step method for solving complex problems. In Al-Khwarizmi's world, applying logic to these steps instead of relying on guesswork was revolutionary. Today's computer algorithms work the same way, just much faster and at a colossal scale. But the concept of it, the idea of breaking challenges into clear, repeatable steps, it comes straight from the dusty maps and merchant roads of Al-Khwarizmi's era. You see, an algorithm at its core is simply a set of steps for solving a problem. In baking a cake, finding a route home, or even using your smartphone, algorithms are everywhere. Guiding actions, structuring decisions, orchestrating the hidden logic behind our daily lives. And another important point, have you ever wondered what happened to Roman numerals? We do see them from time to time on our watches or in great movie titles. For example, the fourth Rocky movie, Rocky IV, came out in 1985, which actually happens to be the same year I was born in. If we were still using Roman numerals today, we would have to write 1985 as MCMLXXXV. Thankfully, and because of Al-Khwarizmi, we don't have to. Because he also helped introduce one of the most practical tools in history, the decimal positional number system. For fun, let's take a trip back to ancient Rome, where You're looking to buy 12 strong and sturdy donkeys. Each donkey comes at a hefty price of 183 denarii, a small fortune at the time. But before you hand over the money, you have to count it. So how would you do that without Arabic numerals or the number 0? Probably using an old Egyptian method where you double and half the sums to find your answer. But before we do the Egyptian example, I just have to clarify one thing. Even though we call them Arabic numerals, the more correct term would actually be Hindu Arabic numerals. The number system, including the concept of 0 and place value, originally comes from India. But it was Al-Khwarizmi that introduced them to the wider world, and therefore today we often refer to them as Arabic numerals. Anyways, back to the donkey buying business. So, on the left you start with the number 12, which is the amount of donkeys you're looking to buy. And then you half it over and over again, ignoring the remainder until you reach 1. On the right you take the number 183, which is the amount of denarii you're supposed to pay per donkey, and then you double it the same number of times. Now, here's the trick. You look only at the rows where the number on the left is odd. In this case, numbers 3 and 1, while ignoring the rest of the even numbers. Then you add the numbers on the right from those rows. 732 plus 1464 equals 2196. And that's your answer. That's how many denaries you'll have to pay for the 12 donkeys. And congratulations, you've just learned how to multiply like a true Egyptian or Roman. But if you want to go even further, you'll have to go buy an abacus. Or if you're lucky like me and have kids, maybe you'll find one among their toys. Now, let's say you wanted to multiply 183 by 12 using Al-Khwarizmi's method, a method based on clear logical steps. Break it down like this. Multiply 183 by 10, that gives you 1830. Then multiply it by 2, that's 366. Add them together and you get 2196. It's simple, repeatable and scalable. That's the power of an algorithm and why Al-Khwarizmi's method changed everything. Thanks to Al-Khwarizmi's work, a much simpler system using the numbers 0 through 9 would eventually make its way to Europe, forever changing mathematics, commerce and daily life. And most importantly, bye-bye Roman numerals. Through a slow and winding process of cultural transmission, Al-Khwarizmi's ideas, via translations, scholars and the movement of texts, made their way into the heart of medieval Europe. In the 12th century, European scholars like Gerard of Cremona, Robert of Chester and al-Ard of Bath helped translate the groundbreaking works of Al-Khwarizmi and other Islamic scholars into Latin, planting seeds that would one day blossom into the European Renaissance. In Toledo, Spain, Al-Khwarizmi's Kitab al-Jabr wa al-Muqabala was translated and reshaped into Latin as Liber Algebrae et al-Muqabula. Through these translations, European scholars encountered concepts that had been unknown or forgotten in the West. Systemic algebra, decimal numbers, and structured problem-solving techniques. This influx of knowledge would quietly prepare Europe for the intellectual awakening of the later Middle Ages and the Renaissance. Had Al-Khwarizmi's ideas never crossed into Europe, the course of science, mathematics, engineering and navigation might have taken a very different path. One of those who recognized Al-Khwarizmi's contribution to science was George Sarton, often referred to as the father of the modern history of science. In his monumental work, Introduction to the History of Science, Sarton named Al-Khwarizmi as the leading mathematician of the 9th century, recognizing him not just as a preserver of ancient knowledge, but as a true innovator. As Sarton described it, Al-Khwarizmi was not merely a transmitter of ancient knowledge, but an innovator, creating new ways of thinking in mathematics and laying the foundation for modern algebra and algorithmic computation. Through Sarton's eyes, we are reminded that Al-Khwarizmi's brilliance did not lay in preserving the discoveries of others, but in expanding and improving upon them. Behind it all, from GPS satellites and computer algorithms to banking systems and engineering marvels, lay the simple idea that Al-Khwarizmi imagined. That even the most complicated systems could be broken down into clear, simple steps. I don't believe that Al-Khwarizmi has received the recognition that he deserves, and there may be many reasons for that. I only hope this contribution helps remember a man whose ideas quietly shaped the modern world. We often say that we stand on the shoulders of giants, but how often do we actually look back and ask, whose shoulders? I hope you enjoyed this episode of Footnotes in History and that you join me as we uncover more stories from our shared past. Do you have someone in mind whose story deserves to be shared? I'd be thrilled to hear from you. Just leave a comment or send me a message. Until our next journey through time, remember, history is closer than you think.